Welcome back to welcome back to Humanity Works podcast. Just had like a little brain fart for a second right there, man. So basically, I was angry with my mother until give a little reflection, a little history. I had a great childhood. I have no complaints. I have nothing to really look back on and be like, I regret this, I regret that. We had a great childhood. I couldn't have been blessed with better parents in this lifetime and in this world than the ones that I had with my mother and my father. You know, growing up, man, you know, the way we did back in the 70s or whatever the case was, man, you know, just reflected back on my mother. My mother was very athletic. She worked for Monsanto at the time. She was always active, man. My mom is actually the one that got me going into football, which I always thought it was my dad until my dad revealed to me, like, no, it was your mother that put you in football when you was young, because I kept running around the couch, man, with those little fake NFL helmets they used to make back in the 70s, running head first into the couch with toilet paper on my shoulders, man, playing this shoulder pads. And I just remember growing up with my mother, man, you know, how she spoke very articulate. She was a very fast talker, you know. Of course, my mama was well known for her bow legs. That's one of the things my daddy always say that kind of attracted him to her back in the day or whatever. You know, I guess he was thinking with his loins. But, you know, just remembering my mother, the way she was when we grew up, it was fun times, man. Every Saturday, it would be me, her, my brother, man, and my mama would make popcorn. Or she would actually, that was back in the days when a lot of mothers would make their own ice cream in like the little bucket. We used to churn the ice cream. And so we would sit back, and at that time, you know, cable TV came out. So we watched cable, you know, on Saturdays. My dad was umpiring at Bell Fountain Park and doing softball games and things of that nature. And so my mom growing up, man, we did a lot of things. We went to the circus every year. We took trips. We went to the zoo. We used to go to the Magic House. It wasn't nothing that my mother didn't do for us. And I just got nothing but great memories with my mother growing up. I can recall her and my dad starting off in racquetball. This is back in the 80s, man, where racquetball, it really wasn't that big of a deal in our communities, because I just don't know why whenever I come on air, man, my body just want to trip with me. But anyway, excuse me. But, you know, back in those days, everything was pretty much basketball dominant, football dominant, in which, you know, we did play football. You know, growing up, my mom was a football mom. She's always been a sports mom growing up. Football moms, basketball mom, you know, and around those days, around the family, we had family get-togethers. My mom cooked. You know, everybody loved my mom's cooking. My mom was well known for her caramel cake and her cookies. You know, my mama used to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies. Now, it got to the point where my daddy, greedy ass, man, would always come and steal our batch. So it got to the point where mama used to make our cookies and hide them in a Tupperware bowl and hide them. And that Negro still found them. You know, the way she used to have Tupperware parties when we used to grow up. So in them days, man, I took it for granted, man, the parents that I had, because I thought every household, I thought all kids had parents like we had. That just simply just was not the case. So, you know, around that time, you know, with my mother being the person that she was big on education. She was wanting the best for her children. We actually ended up going to a private Christian school. And upon going to that private Christian school, because I think my dad always would say, you know, they would go back and forth. My dad was like, public school is good enough, but my mama wanted us to have a private education. And I remember specifically when we used to go to this school when we were young, I had so many issues at this private school. It was a Christian private school, but it was a very racist school, which most private Christian schools that are pretty much a PWI, most of them are pretty much racist. So around this time, coming from an area where at that time was considered middle class, coming from a predominantly black neighborhood, you know, we just came out there with certain cultures, man, and certain characteristics, and our behaviors was not bad behavior. It was just different behavior, something that was pretty much foreign to most of the white teachers at this time. This is the time where a lot of programs were doing the DSEG program, so you'd have kids in the inner city of St. Louis going way out to Eureka or Rock Hill Summit or Rock Summit School or Parkway North. You know, they were hitting up these programs, right? So, but we were actually going to Ferguson, Missouri, quote unquote, the famous location of the Mike Brown murder. So just out here, I noticed that it was just us and a couple of other, you know, black kids that went to this private school. And when I tell you that we were targeted every single day, you know, we were always in detention. We were always being suspended. But as far as for myself, being the kid that I was an independent thinker. I pretty much was kind of dominant. But at the same time, I still was doing what I was supposed to do in the classrooms. My parents didn't play that. I did not want to get a whooping from my father for having bad behavior. But as time went on, it would be like little things that I think was culturally biased targeting that always sent slips to the house, always in detention. And these things would constantly break my mother's heart. I constantly kept telling my mom, and my dad at the time, yo, this is what's going on. My dad would always say, well, I look at what you do around the house. And, that makes a lot of sense. But I kept telling him there was a dirty undercurrent of culture that was going on with most black students, that people in the 80s, I don't really think they believed it was real. So basically, it got to the point to where I kept getting in so much trouble. I kept getting detentions. I kept getting disciplined. I kept getting sent to the office, but not necessarily for doing bad things. I kept being targeted along with the other black males in the school at that time. We were all targeted. We were all always in the principal's office. I mean, hell, one time I remember coming in from recess, man, and I specifically remember this white girl named Amy ran up to me and she held my hand, and the teacher became livid. And made me in them days, she made me stay in from recess the next day and write sentences. Now that was terrifying. That's back in the days where teachers would make you write 100 lines for a sentence. They don't do that no more. They got this thing called ISS or whatever the case may be. So finally, man, it got to the point where I guess, one of the things that I did broke the camel's back, and they sent a letter home to my mother, and I was expelled. And I think they also expelled my brother as well along with me. This deeply impacted my mother and broke her heart. I didn't realize how much heartache and pain it caused her, because my mama really believed in us getting a good education. She wanted us to go out there and represent ourselves to the best of our ability. And to go out there and to have that situation happen, it just did something to her. It really devastated her to the point that one day her best friend was visiting over our house, and we were outside playing. And just like any other day, we didn't think nothing about it. And the next thing you know, my mom's childhood friend, Marion Reese, she came outside. She said, hey, something's not right with your mother. Something's very wrong. And all I remember is she said my mother told her she had a bad headache and she went to go lay down. But Marion Reese quickly identified that there was a real serious problem. So at that time, we contacted our next door neighbors, the McElroys, Mr. and Mrs. McElroy's EIE, because they were our second set of parents. So when they came over and my dad wasn't home yet, they also identified something was not right. She had a headache, but this was a different type of headache. My mom wasn't responding. She was gone. So by the time my father got home, I think the ambulance, I can't recall if my dad took her to the hospital or the ambulance, she was rushed to the hospital. We get to the hospital. At that time, it was a hospital right there in the Normandy area on Natural Bridge across the street from Normandy Junior High. That was the worst. They was about to send my mother back home. And my father fought tooth and nail to tell them doctors that, no, you're not sending my wife back home. Something is wrong. Something is not right. And, and I'm just kind of giving the outside. I'm not really going in depth with it, but these are the kind of things that I can recall and remember. So I remember that didn't work out. So then she was rushed to, I believe it was St. John's Baptist Hospital on Old Ballas Road. I believe it was St. John's Hospital, right? They were about to send my mother home. The first hospital was about to send my mother home. And I told you all in a prior video, I don't like going to hospitals where non-white people run and control it, because they really don't value us. They do not value their own. And I'm not going to paint, all of them with the same paintbrush, but the majority of our people don't value us. So we had to go to the white area, which was St. John's Baptist Hospital. Come to find out, they immediately identified that my mother was having an aneurysm. And anybody know anything about strokes and things of that nature, an aneurysm is like the king of them all. So a blood vessel had bursted in my mother's brain. And I guess it was due from stress. It could have been due from heartache and pain. So identifying this, my mother had to go into surgery. And she went through the surgery. And next thing you know, my mother whole life changes. She's now partially paralyzed. She lost a lot of her speech. And she's lost a lot of her hair. They had to really go in and do a lot of cutting on her head. And she lost a lot of her hair, and a lot of it never grew back. And, it kind of put my mother in a different state of being as far as hairstyles. Now, she still had hair to where she can still get hairstyles. But over time, she was steady losing hair. This is why I think black men, we really need to ease up on the appearance of black women, because we just don't know what they're going through. A lot of our women are dealing with cancers and illnesses to where their appearance it is what it is. So we need to ease up on when we see our women as far as what they should look like. That needs to be deaded ASAP. But upon that, I specifically remember that my mama pretty much was in the hospital for almost a year. And so now my dad was left to raise us and us alone. And when I tell you, I always tell people my father's the greatest man alive. You know, that man had to take on the role of not only just being our father, but he had to try to take on some of the roles that our mothers occupied. Now, we're devastated. You know, there were plenty of nights we would ride home from the hospital. We were numb. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know we was going to have our mother in our lives. And my dad did the best that he could. Hell, I remember one morning he tried to make us pancakes and damn near blowed half his ass off. All we saw was a big flame go through the kitchen. And everybody know my daddy light skinned, but that day he was as dark as this damn mic flag right here. Afro all fried to the side. Trying to make some pancakes. I don't know what the hell he was doing. But those are one of the memories that I remember. So I remember at this time now, coming to summertime, it wasn't like it was before. Now we had to go to our families on the south side of St. Louis and stay. And at the same time, this whole time, I didn't quite understand what was going on. Now, I'm going to be transparent in this video, and I'm going to let it all out. So around this time when my mother is in the hospital in a whole nother state, she's, you know, not herself. She's not really responding. You know, day by day, things would come back, but it was a struggle. Every day, my dad would work long, hard hours and then go out to the hospital. We had a lot of family that was supportive and helped us at the time. And I will never forget when my mama went down, there were so many women that approached my father and asked him, was he going to still remain with her? Because she was never going to be the same again. And my dad never left my mother's side. There's no greater love that I know. So even though this is about my mother, I have to also I have to give my daddy his flowers as well, too. But here's the part of the story that my father didn't know until I revealed till later on. So at this time, my mama's going through this medical change, this complete life-altering situation from an aneurysm. And so now we're left to deal with a lot of family members on both sides of the family. But when it came to my mama's side of the family, it was clear that I was to blame. It was clear that they thought that I was the reason that my mama had that aneurysm and that she was never the same again. And to a certain point, I could kind of agree with that to a degree. And I'll take that. And, you know, at that time, it really made me feel bad. Well, one day while we were down on the south side of St. Louis at my grandmama's house on my mother's side, I was flagged to go around to my cousin at that time, Jessica. They had just moved around the corner from my grandmama and stayed in this cul-de-sac. And when I got around her to the cul-de-sac, the majority of my mama family was standing outside. I didn't know what was going on. My brother Jay was kept with my grandmama for whatever reason. Out emerges my Uncle Alan and beat the shit out of me in front of my mom, the majority of my mama's side of the family watching. Yeah, I never forgot that. And I'm putting it out to the world today. My Uncle Alan whooped my ass in front of my mama's side of the family. I guess in being angry because of her situation. They said it was my fault. So he whooped me up. Nobody came to help. Nobody stopped him. I was 12 years old. My uncle I think he was in his 20s. Whooped my ass. And that's why a lot of people, that knew me in the 9th grade, I was swole. I started hitting them weights because my uncle, trauma induces you into a whole nother mindset to where you become a person that you were already supposed to become. But through that trauma and that traumatic day, it led me to the weight room. And when I was younger, some people think I'm big now. You should have seen me when I was going into high school. I was built like Tookie Williams because my uncle was going to be the last man to even handle me like that. Never thought I would win every fight that I had, but won't no man ever handle me like that. You dig? So basically, I had anger in me. I had a lot of rage in me. I never looked at my mother's family the same again, and I think that's where I really kind of made a separation from most of them, and that's why I really haven't had the attachments to them like I have had with my father's family. And I don't know if they've ever realized that, but today that's what it is. Now, even on my father's side of the family, I had issues over there as well too. My brother Jay, man, like I tell people all the time, he was a different type of dude. Like my brother Jay, he has a silent strength to where he wasn't really emotional, but he dealt with whatever he dealt with from the inside. Me, I was a little bit more different. And hanging with my father's family from time to time, I would have explosions of anger and temper and just mad about stuff. And particularly, I remember one time we was at Forest Park, I called my Aunt Trish a bitch. I was angry. And the woman of God that she is, she didn't respond with aggression. She didn't respond with anger. She just sat me down and talked to me. She disciplined me, but I just had tears. I had a lot of anger going on right now. In my mind, I done lost my mama. My mama's never gonna be the same again. I don't hardly see my dad because my dad's working a lot. When I do see him, he's very irate. He's tired. He's got a lot of pressure on him. And I never held that against my father. Not one time did I look at my father in any type of way, any type of light. But now comes the time, shortly after about a year or so, my mom comes home. And I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with somebody in the family who's dealt with a very serious medical situation. But when they come back into the world, for some reason, there is tension. There is disappointment. There is anger. There is embarrassment. There is defeat. There is uncertainty. And seeing my mom in the state that she was, from what I've known as a kid, bothered the hell out of me. At times, my mama struggled to speak and couldn't stand up. I mean, could not stand up for herself. She couldn't articulate herself in public. When my mama, we started to try to make life normal for her again, we go out to shop or we go out to eat. If somebody just even looked at my mother, she would start crying. And now I'm dealing with a woman who is my mother that barely can articulate to me and get her words out. My mom is to the point to where she can't do certain things physically or function. Learning how to walk, learning how to talk, eating her foods a certain way, and not having an appetite. I saw great depression upon my mother. And the beauty of it all, that even in the darkest moment, the light shined upon my mother because my mother became pregnant with my youngest brother, who we all looked upon as a miracle baby. In spite of the situations, we didn't know how my brother was going to come out. We didn't know if her aneurysm was going to affect any of his body functions. Was he going to be a premature baby? Which, out of me and my brothers, Alex is the fat ass. He was the heaviest, biggest baby. So, what I'm saying, that proved not to be true. But I used to go back and forth and war with my mother on a daily basis. It would be times like we'd be out in public and I'd be like, and I have to keep it a cap. Like, I'd be like, it was kind of like that movie Imitation of Life. You in public and people mock your mother. They look at her appearance and you just don't acknowledge her. You kind of just stay at a distance. You don't want to deal with that embarrassment. You don't want to deal with that humiliation. And I saw my mama have to deal with this. So when my mother, I had anger with her because she wasn't the same. She was not the mother I had growing up. She was not the happy, jolly-go-lucky mother that I had, that I used to watch play racquetball, that used to play volleyball with her co-workers on certain league nights. The snappy, fiery woman that talked 100 miles an hour. I didn't know who this person was. And I could tell that my mother was frustrated with me as well, too. There would be many days she would have anger and outbursts towards me. Sometimes would just grab me or push me or just, furrow her lips. We both were going at it with each other. And at that time, I didn't realize that subconsciously I had an issue with my mother because I felt like this could have all been avoided had my mama only believed half the stuff that I was trying to tell her that was going on in the school systems. But it wasn't. As time goes on, my mother she does begin to regain life. She does begin to regain a lot of speech. She does begin to regain a lot of consciousness. She does begin to regain a lot of use of her arms, even though it's never going to be back the way that it was. And I had to watch my mother become the strongest individual I ever seen in my life. When people talk about strength and what they've been through, not a lot compared to my mother as far as what she's been through. And I know that's biased because I'm talking about my mother. But to go down from an aneurysm, not knowing if you're going to make it, almost close to death, and then you have to relearn how to live and do everything again. And you did it going through the humiliation, embarrassment, people laughing at you. Kids don't understand why you talk the way that you do. But my mama she just never gave up. She kept pushing. She kept going. She was going to the grocery store. She was driving her car. She was running us back and forth, my youngest brother back and forth to school, basketball practice. She was still a good wife to my father, cooking his food, still cooking for family dinners. All these things were happening through all these years. But the thing about it, my mom was very quiet. My mom was very tucked away. My mom was very introverted. She don't like to be around a lot of people. And so through it all, with her life being different, my mama had to reinvent herself and find life for herself. She had to find pockets of happiness for herself that made her happy. She had to learn what was the quiet space for her, the peaceful space for her. Crossword puzzles to work her mind. Walking, doing certain things. Now, My mama still knew how to cuss. Because when she get mad, she would really get at us. But what I noticed that a lot of times when people are around, my mama was just quiet and kind of tuck away and go hide away. My mama would make a dinner for the whole family, just kind of tuck and go hide away. My mama, on her own grit, on many a days, I know my mother probably felt like she was by herself. I know my mama felt like a lot of people didn't understand her. Many a days, nobody was around when she was out trying to function and maneuver, going to grocery stores, trying to take care of business, and she couldn't talk, and people were being impatient with her. Nobody was there to defend her, but she kept going anyway. A lot of times, we didn't even see the hurt and pain and guilt on my mother when she came around. She hit it so good. But I had anger with my mother and didn't realize it. A lot of times I call home, most of the time I'm calling my dad's phone. And out of me and my brothers, I think I'm the one that's the daddy's boy, as opposed to my brothers were more like mommy boys. But my dad was like, call your mother. Then it got to the point I had to ask myself, talking to a friend of mine. She was like, I think you're angry with your mother. And I had to think about it. And when I thought about it, I was. I never let that anger go for my mama not having my back when I was in Christian private school dealing with these people. But I had that anger for a long time until the day that I realized I almost lost my mother. So many people around me have lost their mother, the pain of losing a mother. I see it all the time on social media. I hear people talk about this. When I first met my daughter's mother, she had just lost her mother. I had never seen sorrow and grief and pain on a person like that before. Never in my life had I seen that kind of grief. And when people were talking about the love of a mother and the pain of not losing a mother and how their mother passed 20, 30 years ago, they never got over it. At some point, at certain times, I couldn't relate. I didn't understand because I was angry with my mother. Until that one day when I realized that I could lose my mother. I had to realize that the greatest love I've ever known in my life came from my mother. And that my mama did what she thought was best for her kids. I'm doing my best to hold it in. I swear to God I do. I am. But I had to come to grips. When I seen that pain and grief on people, I had to really come to grips and understand that, boy, you had better really start to love on your mother and cherish her presence. My mama don't have an enemy in the world. Listen, y'all know, man, I have a checkered dating past. There's a lot of women probably look at this and be like, yeah, I remember you, nigga. I hated you. You was an asshole. I remember one time I was on a date with a girl. St. Louis has a real serious gang culture, especially back in them days. And we got into an argument, and I'm like, well, hell, drop me off on the curb. I was in an enemy territory. Drop me off in this neighborhood. And I got out the car. Next thing you know, she pulls back up, say, get in the car. I want to take you home because I love your mother. I spoke about this before, how the Bible talks about it's better to have a good name than silver and gold, because my mama's name got me out of a lot of trouble. But when I realized the importance of my mama, when I look at her strength and her courage, when I look at all that she had to endure that she can't talk about, everything that she had to endure that she probably may never write a book about, everything my mother had to endure that people never even think to consider that she was going through, that she kept it all to herself. And at times I have to sit back and watch how sometimes people get impatient with her. People get fussy and snappy with her. Even with my daughter sometimes, I'm like, hey, I sit back and I look at these things like, y'all need to slow y'all roll. Do y'all understand? All of us are living a normal life. None of us are partially paralyzed. None of us have lost none of our speech. Mama has. But I've never seen my mama just laid up, giving up. I'm not saying she don't have her days. I'm not saying she ain't been depressed. I'm not saying she don't get on my dad's nerves, and I know my daddy get on her nerves sometimes. But you know what? I had to realize, man, I love my mama. I love my mother. My anger that I had towards my mother was selfish. It was selfish. I didn't take time to consider what my mama really wanted for us and what she was trying to do and what she thought was best for us. And you know why? Because when I became a father, or when I started coaching, I get frustrated with these kids. They can't see what I'm trying to do for them. I'm trying to give them the best. I'm trying to lead them a certain type of way. And when these kids go against the grain, it bothers the hell out of me. And that's all my mother was doing. Sometimes, man, I bawl thinking about my mama and the stuff that she had to endure. I bawl when I see my mama losing her best friend, when she lost her mother, when she lost her youngest brother, her sister. And I see the strength on my mama Where does she get it from? What does she do in her quiet moments and her quiet times? It got to the point to where if I felt like I had an issue or a problem to talk that need to be done, I went to my father because I felt like I couldn't trust my mother for so many years because she wouldn't value what I felt. I was wrong. And when me and my mama finally had this talk, because I had to get permission to make this episode because it was near and dear to my heart and it came to my heart to make it. Because I'm going to give my mama her flowers today while she alive. My mama had to really come to grips and understand the one thing that I really truly loved about my mama is that she was open to hear my cry and why I had anger. And when I tell this to people, people be like, man, are you out of your damn mind? That's your mother. There's no greater love than I know than the love of a mother. And mama, I love you. I still have you and I got you. And you know how we always talk on the phone. You my Tennessee nigga. A lot of people don't understand that relationship sometimes the way we talk. You know, and just, you know, my mama smile. My mama has a pretty smile. You know, I remember, you know, a lot of people don't remember before I had gold crowns, my teeth were just straight. I remember the day my mama seen them goals in my mouth and walked away. And my mama didn't talk to me for almost 2 months. But y'all want to know where I got that smile from? I got that smile from my mama. Y'all want to know where I got my legs from? I got my legs from my mama. The love that I have in my heart and how to love and treat people right, I got that from my mama. And Charlie Red an asshole, but I got it from my mama. Let's just keep it a buck, Red Rooster. You that dude don't know, but for real, I was angry until my mama, until I realized I could lose my mama. A lot of us, we live life like we live life expectantly, thinking that we don't expect the worst. We just don't expect somebody to leave on us at an unexpected moment, at an unexpected time. My daddy always said, on your wellest day, you're good enough to die. I had to come to grips and had to come to terms with my mama. And to see her still pushing and striving today and getting out there in the world and doing what she got to do, man, that's one of the greatest comeback stories ever. The greatest comeback story ever in my book is my mother. I want to take time to honor all of you all who have lost your mother. I have no words to express that pain. I dread that pain. I dread that day. But I'm going to give praise and honor and salute all of you all who have lost a mother. And I'm going to give my mama her flowers today while she's still alive and she can hear and see me. I ain't mad at you no more, mama. I'm really not. I love you. I value you, mama. And I had to make this episode just for you, just to let you know that I'm conscious of a lot of stuff that most people ain't. I know you have your moments. I know you do. I know you go somewhere sometimes where nobody else is around to a location and just cry. I know sometimes you might reflect on what life could have been like and what your life used to be like. Mama, I be keeping all this conscious. I keep it on me. I think about it all the time. But I'm going to tell you something. You a great wife. You put pressure on any woman that want to come in my life to be my wife because I've seen the best in you as a wife. I've seen the best in you as a mother. I've seen the best in you as an aunt. I've seen the best in you as a grandmother. I've seen the best in you as a sister. I've seen the best of you as a woman and one who loves God. You know, and I remember the song you used to sing at church back in the day. You know what I'm saying? And you did your thing, mama. You know, I look at those things. Those tapes are like nostalgic now. I know dad got all of them with his stingy ass. He don't want to let nobody look at him. He always talking about he got business to take care of. That man been saying that for 20 years, man. Man, pull them damn tapes out and let us look at them tapes, boy. But mama, I'm going to tell you today, your son ain't mad at you. Your son cares about you. Your son values you. And I just want you to understand that you mean everything to me. So don't ever doubt that you don't. And crazy of me to think that I held on to that anger for so long because of what happened in the school system years ago. It ain't even nothing to forgive you for. I ask of your forgiveness, mama, for not being a better son in so many ways to just at least bring that issue up. So, hey, here's to you, Rainy. As Aunt Trish would call you, Rainy, the baby of the pack. Or like Aunt Helen used to say, bae, hey, bae. Or like when Aunt Geneva called our house, and I ain't going to even say the words she want to say, you know what I'm saying? But you know Aunt Geneva's something else. But mama, you the best mother a kid could ever have in his lifetime. I love you. Jay love you. Dot love you. All of our kids. We honor you. Oh, yeah. I honor you, mama. And y'all had better realize something, too. Your mother's still alive. Whatever the situation is, man, you better go make amends. Your father's still alive. And I understand when it comes to fathers, that's a whole nother dynamic. But if your father's still alive, man, you better go make them ends meet. You better make amends, because it's going to come a day and time. Because I'm telling you something, man. The only thing superior to your emotions is time. And you know why I say that? It's because time outlasts any feeling that you're going to ever have towards anybody. Nobody's going to hate anybody forever unless you murdered or did something to somebody. And even people can still forgive. So I suggest, while you have loved ones in your life, even if it ain't a mother or a father, you had better go and let them know how much you value them, how much you care about them, how much you love them. Because, man, I can't stress this enough. It's going to come a day where we will never be heard ever again. And we say this constantly, but that's a real reality. That's a real reality. All I have is videotapes to look at a lot of my people who have gone on. You know what I'm saying? All I have is memories. I have memories. I go to bed at night sometimes thinking about the memories of my family. Boy. Boy, we better get it together. You better get over yourself. And get over yourself quick. I did it. I feel good about it. And I could do that with anybody and anyone at any given time. So whoever you angry at, you better understand that you can lose them. And there ain't no sense in being angry at a person that's not here to have a conversation with and say, hey, I'm sorry. Or even they could tell you that they sorry. Listen, man, I always tell y'all, man, I value you. I love you, man. Don't ever tell me what you know if you can't prove its existence. And whenever man acts according to God's will, humanity is going to always work. Peace.